Hi, everybody. A long time ago, a really smart woman named Jackie Shearer, who was one of the award-winning producers who worked on that original civil rights series of documentaries, Eyes on the Prize, pulled me aside and told me several things that I've never forgotten, but one of which was, she said, excellence happens at the moment of conception, at the moment of concept. In other words, if you have a fresh idea about how to do a story, or if you can cut through the information in a new way, or in a new setting, or through a unique voice, that's frequently what will determine the success of what you're trying to do. If you have a mediocre concept, or if you're just going to go get B-roll and do a couple interviews, you can work your tail off. In the end, it's not going to be all that special. And I think she's right. And usually what happens is there's a series of conversations. When Lisa Berglund and I were working on this sewing machine video, it actually started with a conversation about, how would we do this? If we were going to try to talk about microloans, how would we do this? And, well, what if we shot it this way? Or what if we talked to that person? And in the end, it sort of became well, what if we hid the fact that the successful, brilliant businesswoman we were talking about was actually a woman of very humble origins? What if we made the audience think she was some successful Wall Street broker or some super powerful CEO? And then all of a sudden we open a door and reveal exactly that we're talking about a woman of much more humble beginnings. And then how would we do that? Would we go from a photo as a child to a child? What we do, well, in the end it was, well, how about if she walks into her office and as the door opens, it opens into a whole new world? And so those were things, ideas that happened, 5,000 miles away and 5 months before it ever happened. But it was a good idea. And then it played out well. And then once we were over there, of course, then it was just a function of, well, first of all, what's the journey? What's the story? How did she begin? What were the obstacles? Had she had difficulties along the way? And my gosh, that's an understatement. Of course she had. And, then it was the hunt for details. It's like, do you remember the first thing you ever made and sold? Oh, it was a dress? What kind of dress? Oh, it was a children's dress? Remember what color it was? Oh, you happen to have one here in the shop? Or, the machine itself. Do you still have that first machine you bought years ago? Oh, you still use it? It's in the back. Can we see it? And then all of a sudden, you realize the power of the image, right? So Rick Riley, who's a great sports reporter, a great sports writer, once said, writing is not the search for details. It's the search for the right detail. So in other words, if you find that dress, if you find that machine, if you find that journey that has the power to awaken a people's imagination or surprise them, you'll have found the right detail. So this idea of concept, frequently the success of what you do will determine about the questions, the what-if conversations. What about if we spoke to the kids instead of the doctors? What about if we, looked at it through the eyes of the receptionist or the person who's burying the president, to use the famous old metaphor from newspaper days, instead of writing it the same way everybody else does? I think that's really, really, really a key. And then it's just a function of fulfilling that vision you have, and then working with what's there. Look around and see what's powerful, see what moves you, and follow that energy. Obviously, the images in there were just fabulous, and that was Lisa's. But even, when I think about that, some of my favorite images in that were the least, I least expected. The moving shot along the children's feet. We weren't doing a story about feet or shoes, and yet there was something so vulnerable, and so every parent could look at those feet and recognize their own child in it. It was such a beautiful thing. So if you're taking the images, look for the right detail, the things of beauty, work with what's in front of you. But remember, it's probably the concept that's going to ultimately determine excellence. Thanks a lot. Oh, see, I set a timer and I hit it right on the nose.